All right. Well, no point in using up your guys' time that had shown up on time. So I appreciate you guys coming over here. So I'm just going to go down some of the details and what you guys can get access to over on the website. So what I'm going to do is more of an in-depth kind of explanation about the business plan deck and how it correlates to the rubric. I would say this is really important to kind of go along with what you guys learned throughout the workshops, because this is going to be placing those details that you've learned throughout the workshops into a presentation deck that would be very useful for the judges to kind of see. So for those who are not aware or have not noticed, is that you guys will be presenting your cases with a pitch deck. Uh, so during your 7-minute presentation time, you'll be able to have the opportunity of showing off some of the details rather than speaking all about them, and going over components about things that you should have and things that I think you should have. If you guys don't know who I am the regional director for the NBPC. I run this entire competition, made the rubric, uh, looked through the presentation pitch decks, made sure there's approvals on them, and then organized the team that got all your guys' judges together. So if you have any questions at all about your presentation or anything like that, feel free to always message me. I'll be there to help you guys out before the final days. So going into what you guys should have on your business plan template. And of course, the rubric that you guys all have is very self-explanatory about what sort of details you guys should have onto your presentation. That's kind of how we, made it to be. So even if you didn't get access to this or haven't seen it yet, you'd still be able to use the rubric to get a good idea of what sort of stuff you should be presenting. However, I do feel as if the rubric doesn't give a proper example to explaining what exactly you should definitely put on there and how you should highlight it on your presentations. So I'm going to go over a couple of example presentations that you guys should have on there as well. So for the business plan, template, and pitch deck, there's a couple of components that you guys need to know about, and they're all related back to the rubric. The very first thing that you'll notice, though, is the cover page. The cover page, essentially, of your business plan is a very important key piece to kind of tell people who you are and what your company is. So pretty much, give us the hook. We want to see what your idea is. Or essentially what is your product or your service in one slide, to kind of wrap up what is exactly the reason why you think this product stands out. It should be your logo or your image. It should tell you a little bit about that one key quote that you have that makes this that you would want to buy it. Your cover page is essentially, why are these judges paying attention to you? And if you don't have a good solid cover page, then you can often lose the attention of the judges very early on. You don't want to overload this with details and explanations. You want to keep it short, simple, and clean. And if you have like an example product or like a version or something that you can kind of put together on Photoshop, then displaying that image so that way they can get a visualization of what exactly is your product or service, if it's physical. If it's more of a metaphysical thing where it's just kind of like in a cloud service or something like that, then it's better to kind of show it in sort of a structure to kind of get people involved and see what exactly are we going to be talking about for the entire time. Although you will not be graded on your cover page, this is very important for making sure your judges will pay attention to you. Next up is establishing the problem or identifying the customer and the user. So now that you've got them hooked and now that you've reeled them in with what you want to do, you got to explain to them what exactly is the reason why people will actually pay for this item. Please put it in simple terms. And kind of describe what exactly or exactly what you're trying to solve and what you're trying to provide to the people that will address this issue or problem. And if you go back onto here, one of the major things is identifying a need or problem. When you're addressing these sorts of things on how you need to be clear and how is it relevant to society, these are the sort of bullet point details in which you're going to put onto your slide. Now, you want to save a lot of the major content and the in-depth details more for your speech. You do not want to overload your problem or your slides with any details that you could speak out loud. It's always better to speak it rather than have it on your slides. And slides are more for numbers, more for the big points, things that you will not be repeating, because you will lose a lot of attention if you try to make them read the slide and listen to you at the same time. So that should be very self-explanatory, the solution and the value proposition. Now, this is the detail that I'm going to go more in depth on. Now, how do you exactly display the solution and the value proposition? Now, if you kind of see it on here, the example slide really puts it together in a very neat and clean way. A lot of your deck is about presentation. When you look at this slide, you should be able to see exactly who is this tailoring to and how is it benefiting the people that are going to be involved in your product or service. This is a wonderful example that you can have. 3 points is really solid. Going back over to here, it's very evident that the product and service offering solves the specifically targeted problem and addresses strengths as the competition. Now, we'll get more into the competition aspects a little bit, but this makes it a little bit more clear and a little bit more obvious as to what exactly they're solving with their Gleam R iPhone app. Derived from, okay. Next is, what is the product and service? And show us the product and service in 3 simple steps. Make it key visual, like your hook. Now, this is your opportunity to go a little bit more in depth. Once they visualize it, once they see the problem, the issue, then you want to go into what exactly is the product or service that you're supplying to people. What is it that are the steps to what you're doing? Is it an item that or an application that you're making that's supposed to do like a key steps to get people to, I don't know, like Airbnb. So your product would get people into the login service. Once you get into the login service, you display a whole bunch of people that are advertising their housing, and then you connect them together, and then you just take a small fee from them. And that's your product. That's as simple as that. But you need to make sure that you show it to people in a very step-by-step process if it's something that requires that sort of detail. Now, for those certain things, I definitely think it's more for, the things like applications or products that do require like a service step that would be involved to integrate it. But this is kind of like a good point. Oh yeah, real clear. It's not a demo, but it's just kind of a way to describe if in a visualization, what is it supposed to do from key A to get to all the way to the very end where the service and product are being used. Next is the business model. The business model is essentially what exactly is it that you're doing to get money? Like, if you're trying to play middleman in a situation where you're trying to hook up, like, say, a tutor with a student, how do you make money in that sort of transaction? Well, you could either label down that you're going to take 15% transaction fees, and you label out what exactly is the place in which you're getting your revenue for. So for those nonprofit organizations, you're going to label out where's your business model, how is it benefiting the community, how is this going to get your nonprofit investors to give you money. And who is your targeting audience? Who exactly is going to buy your product? Because it's not going to be everybody. Even for the iPhone is not a product that every single person buys. It actually has a very specific and niche category for luxury goods. And that's who they service, and that's what they do. So you can't say everybody is your audience. You need to focus and hone in on one. And the more specific your details are, the more ability it is to get an idea like, oh, these people are going to see a value out of it. It tells your judges that you have considered who exactly is going to be purchasing the stuff that you're making up. The market opportunities. This is where you'll be able to show money, or show how much money you'll make, and how much you can dominate your targeted market. So in terms of, when you're setting up for your marketing analysis, this is kind of explaining how many people do you intend to get across? Like what is your potential number of customers that you're going to reach within your target audience? So say you're targeting, so say you're targeting a specific category of people, like those within areas with less than $60,000 of income, and that's your targeted audience. Well, then you can kind of average and estimate where exactly, okay, now there's not that many people that live in an area like that, so we're going to estimate that our number is going to look like blah, blah. What I can say is that you shouldn't focus too much on the numbers. The judges and myself will not know if you're being 100% accurate. That's just going to be the case. If you make up some numbers, then make sure they're just reasonable numbers. Something that looks accurate. Like if you think you're going to get a customer count of like 50,000 people all within like 1 week, then your judges are going to be speculating, wait, how are they going to do that? What makes them say they're going to be able to hit that? So although the numbers don't matter too much, try to make sure it's in a good, reasonable number that makes sense with what you're setting up for your target audience. For your marketing opportunities, make sure you list out 3 important aspects of marketing to increase the company performance. How exactly are you going to get people to see this? So here's an analysis of the 3 market sizes. Here's 3 different aspects of which would be different statistics that you can pull up to make sure that your judges do know that they have certain statistics they can evaluate when thinking about like, oh, people will actually buy this product. So when you're explaining what your marketing is, make sure you explain it in different aspects. Convince them that it's going to work, and how exactly are you going to get this out to people. And that's what they're looking for with this. This is how you're setting your pricing. This is how you're doing all your details. Make sure your marketing is really well detailed on exactly, why you have things set up the way you do and why you're so confident you're going to get people on this. Next off is the competition, and the competition aspect goes back into your solution and value proposition. So this one has a little further down, but that's all right as long as you share all the details in a very coherent way. The order doesn't matter as much. But this one is very specifically tries to show competition in means of what is the more convenient and less expensive solutions. When you're thinking about your product and what you should be doing for your specific competition, label them out. So right here it says competitor logo. Yeah, you can't do that. You have to label out what is your logo and what is the company that you're competing against, and evaluate what exactly aren't your competitors if you're going to say you don't have that many competitors. Like, for example, small-time coffee shops. If you're thinking about making a coffee shop, you would think, oh, well, Starbucks would be my competitor. Well, it depends on what you're trying to compete at. In that sort of set scenario, if you're just like a drive-through coffee place to get your coffee, go, then what you're competing for is your coffee. But Starbucks is not competing for coffee. What they're competing for is for your second office space, or, well, your third office space. And that which makes it a little bit more clear that, oh, well, they're not trying to go into the same category that you are, so they're not a competitor. So that's what I would say for those of you that feel like, oh, my product is so, out of the blue, crazy idea that no one's going to ever be able to come up with. Well, that's a good way to kind of explain it, is why are people not your competitors? And if you do have competitors, try to beat them in certain categories. For Gleamer, it's more convenient and less expensive comparative to the other ones. And it's a very simple infographic. Now, you're going to want to go into more detail about why is it more convenient and less expensive than your other competitors. But this graphic pretty much is convincing to a lot of people about, okay, well then, of course I want to have something more convenient. Of course I want to have something less expensive. And that's what you're trying to set through in this presentation, is the of course I want this. And that's kind of why the matrix grid is a very common practice that you can put up for competition, but it's not the only path you can go for that. And of course, I'll explain that in our other example slides that you can use. Next off is growth strategy. How will you acquire and retain the customers, and profitability at scale? And how will you keep your product competitive? So now you're getting into a very interesting part. The key question of every business is, how do you maintain and get customers? If you can find the solution to this, then you are the god of business. However, since no one has ever gotten that far before, what we're looking for is your estimations, your bets. What do you think would be very good for a customer who is rational? So a lot of the key points that you want to hit on is the customer acquisition, the customer retention, and the product innovation. These are 3 key growth strategies that you can use inside to scale your business. How it's going to get bigger. So that's kind of the aspects in which the Gleam R service is trying to hit on, is that they're going to be growing based on these 3 key factors. Of course, you can use these 3 key factors because it's a generalization. However, there's several ways to scale your business and growth strategy. So these are really important for you to utilize. And it's a good example for those who really aren't sure about how are they going to go and try to scale up. If your product or your service is not doing these 3 things, then you can kind of evaluate and say, yeah, this might not be a product. And that's what your judges will be thinking too, if you're struggling with coming up with reasons to why your customer will want to stay, and why your product is competitive, and why your marketing and sales are going to get people. Next off is your financials. And honestly, there's a lot of examples of financials out there, but I definitely think this is the very best example of the financials. Now, what we're looking for is just 3 years of projections. Once again, the numbers, they do not matter. They just have to make sense enough. Like if you are trying to make like a multi-millionaire business in like 1 year, then I think you should scale back your numbers a bit. And as you can see, it kind of details where exactly they're going to get their profit from and how much is going to cost them. So they're setting their OPEX, but of course, you just probably want to put that down as your liabilities or any of the revenue and the profit and loss that you guys would normally get used to in your guys' classes. Have them onto there. And then pretty much slate down, what exactly you're going to get money from and where you're going to lose money. Now, for this particular company, a lot of the money is going into their marketing, which is very common for a business structure to do, is to, bleed out a lot of money. It usually will stay in the red for the very first year, second year, and then on the 3rd year, they start getting some money up. And then for those nonprofit organizations that are out there, who are your donors? So what you're going to probably do is, set up like, how are you going to pay off your workers, and what is that you're spending on, like what product or service is costing you money, And then for whatever you have left over, that's where you're going to ask for donors to give you support. Now, if you're a nonprofit, doesn't mean you make no money. I just want to state that out there. So you should have some amount of profit, but you should never have, you'll have amounts of revenue, but you probably won't have profits. Your profits will be reinvested. Also, it's always good to say where exactly your profits are getting invested. However, if you're not a nonprofit and you're going into this, then it's always a good strategy to consider all the different factors of which you're getting money and how you're going to spend to make your product or service. How much does an app cost is an important piece to it. How much is it going to cost to pay your workers, or your workers just going to be free and you're going to make it with just one or two people? Are you hiring people? Stuff like that. Do you need other different things like customer service lines or things like that? And evaluate that and then set up your pricing. So right here, this is kind of the best model I can show you guys, but I can show you some other ones. It's just that if you guys are looking for examples, this is the best one to use based on my own thoughts and opinion. Next off is your team. Now, I would say have this earlier in the slides. This isn't very common because, a lot of the times people save the teams for the closer towards the end. However, since you're dealing with judges and not actual VCs, probably push this up a couple of slides. That way they get to know who you are. And what does your team look like? Well, essentially, your team has to have positions organized, for your organization, you need to have people that have things that they're doing. So if you're a team of 5 people, then set up your roles. You guys are all founders, or if there's only like maybe 1 or 2 founders or just one, set them up and establish who is doing what. Basically, what you're trying to do is convince them that you have structure in your business, that there are people that are working on different things to cover the grounds. Now, if you have a team and it's just all 5 founders, then no one's going to know, do you have an engineer on your team to get this product out? Do you have someone in marketing that specializes in it that could actually market the item and do it well? And this is kind of where, it's really important to have that. So, right here it says to be decided. That one you can kind of just, I would say you don't want to have empty spots for different positions. Try to label them out. And if you don't have one for a specific position, of course, you don't need to have there. And if you're a team of like 1 or 2 people, then consider this: who do you need to hire? What makes your team? If you are going to do this alone, then can you convince them that you can make this product all alone? I won't say there's a very high likelihood of that. However, then again, it's not the craziest thing to say that a team of 1 could possibly make the idea work. But if you are, I would say consider hiring people. And if you are hiring people, who are you hiring? Are you going to hire a VP of marketing? Are you going to hire a customer service? Are you going to hire a couple of advisors and someone to help you out with engineering and stuff? Are you going to hire a treasurer? Things like that. So make sure you have those details put together and you list them out on your team form. Okay, next off is the finishing off portion. Actually, there is one part that I'm going to add into here that's actually not on here because we just included it. So I'm going to skip over to the rubber band is your quarantine and coronavirus response. Now, the reason why this is so important is because it's that every single business from here on out is always going to have a response to COVID. They're always going to have a response to quarantine. And if you're going to start your business, then you need to have a response to quarantine and COVID, because every other business is now going to implement that into their line. So in terms of what I would say for your quarantine or coronavirus responses, one thing that we're looking for is a creative response and is it workable? So if you are a place that wants to be like a restaurant, if that's your business, then set up some sort of quarantine response. Now, we're not going to set you in the setting in which it's quarantine for your businesses, but we want you to have a response for if quarantine hits, what do you do? And if you're a restaurant, do you do a curbside pickup sort of response? Do you partner up with DoorDash to kind of get some deals on that? What exactly, or sorry, getting some messages at the same time. But yeah, what exactly is the way that you're going to get around COVID? And if you're an application or you're an app or something, you still need to respond to COVID by leveraging what COVID does offer your app, or by the fact that if you're working in an office space, do you have everything set up so that way you guys can have workers at home? Now, if you are a product that doesn't need any interaction at all, it's very easy to address COVID. In fact, there's certain companies that have profited off of COVID, like DoorDash. But if you know, there's different companies like, I think it was like EY or PwC, who, although they're an office space and a company consulting area that needs to meet up with people, they're getting more money out of COVID by their response. So, I would say don't throw out the idea of, giving out public service or, interacting with people. We don't want you to set up your business in that time. However, do make sure that you have a method to how you're going to deal with COVID. Make it something creative, find a way to leverage it, and make sure that you can convince people that it's a workable idea. And then once you have done all that, what you're going to do is you're going to compile it all up and pretty much summarize your main details. You gave them a lot of slides, a lot of details that they need to review. Make sure that they know exactly what is it that is the main points of your entire presentation. This is really good to kind of just reiterate a lot of the same points that you have done, and just kind of hammer those factors in to make sure that you have all the stuff covered. And then once you're finished up with that, you of course go into your Q&A section. Now for your Q&A section, I want you to think about it as in when a judge asks you a question, they're not trying to trip you up. They're asking you a question because they feel like they're not going to give you the full points unless you explain it a little bit more clear and a little bit more towards the rubric on what that needs to be on there. So do you remember if they ask you a question about, oh, what's your financials on the third year? Why is it so weird? Or something like that. Take a moment to realize that they're trying to save you from not giving you the full points. So do make sure that you pay attention to those questions and try to, be fully prepared. Every single person in the presentation aspect should know the answers of those questions and to be prepared to answer any of those things that pop up. And I use the 30 minutes to go towards presenting information that you guys should know about and all the details that you should be kind of covering up in your presentation. Now I'm actually going to go into a little bit of sharing some example slides. Some of these famous pitch or companies that had pitch decks that I'm going to show you. Maybe some of you guys might know these, like YouTube or LinkedIn. Well, if you don't know what LinkedIn is, then I feel like you need to get a LinkedIn. And then, stuff like, or names of stuff you may not know. And things like these are like companies that did succeed. I did do well. And here are all their presentations. Of course, I can always put this up for you guys. I was checking through a lot of them to kind of see what exactly they have on their original presentation deck. So I'll give you guys access to it, but this is a great way to kind of look and see how is it that famous companies have set up their presentations and how do they set it up to look like. One thing that I would say that is really good is the favorite takeaways. Now, the favorite takeaways are they're specifying what exactly did they really well in this presentation. And that's the sort of stuff that you want to copy. Now, if you look at the presentation and you copy the entirety of Facebook, then you're going to miss out on a lot of points. Of course, I'm going to post them up. I'll post them in chat for you guys. Let me edit that really quickly. Because you guys are here, I always feel like giving those who attend these sorts of things a little edge up, because you guys are investing your time into listening to me talk about this. So I feel like I should give you guys an extra edge for those that are really paying attention to everything. These ones, I would say, are really solid in what their presentation looks like. They're really simplest. They're really simplistic on how they set it up. And the details are all there. They're all present. Of course, one thing I would want you to do is kind of merge these ideas all together. Try to get a big picture going on with all the best aspects of each of these and all the knowledge you know about your stuff. So that's what in particular I think would be really beneficial for your guys' particular presentations. Make sure that you have these things covered, and you of course don't need to have them all, but I would say it's better to have these details all now. So this will be a really good start for you guys. And then also, in addition to this is just kind of an article detailing a lot of the stuff that you should have on your pitch deck. This is a little bit more for the readers and not the visualization people. For any details you guys want to have on there, the kind of explains things in depth about what you should have on there. It's covered pretty much everything on here is on our rubric. So make sure you cover these aspects that are on here. And it gives you a little bit more wording on this all. And if you want to have access to all of this, this is also on our website. So you just go into the NBPC College Leap website. Takes a second, a lot of traffic. Go on down here to the educational resources. You'll find the rubric right here and the business plan guide right here. And this will give you a good rundown. Now, I get to answer any of your guys' questions about your guys' presentations, about what you guys would want to have on there if you have any questions. This is a great opportunity for me to answer anything that you guys feel like is specific to your guys' specific to your guys' product or service, or if you have any questions about what you should have on there for details, or if you're a very specific type of product or service, then I can kind of go in depth about what I feel would be beneficial to have on there. So I'm going to give 1 second and step away for 1 minute. But if you guys want to type in any questions at all, feel free to type it in the Q&A or in the chat box. The chat box, I might miss some, but in the Q&A box, for sure. Talked up the storm. I needed to get us some water. So, do all team members need to be present? Yes, all team members need to be present. If your team member is not present, they're getting removed from going into the next round, and they're not receiving a reward placement if they do. This is really important for us to make sure that you guys are all speaking and participating, because there's no other way for us to track that you're going to do it. Now, if there's a special case, like an emergency that happens and they still want to be in the presentation, there could possibly be a means that we could get them in. However, they need to email me and their regional manager to make sure that's sorted out in detail, so that way they can proceed on. They have to have a very good excuse, very good reason to why they can't make it. and I would say that you guys would probably get knocked off some points if they're not all present, depending on the situation. So that's my response towards that. Is there any other questions you guys have on particularly what you guys should have on your decks? Or just in general? I can answer anything about the competition so far. Okay. This is my first time hearing about this. Still need to read more. For what I understand, this presentation to company, ergo business plan, can be fictional. The info must be coherent and make sense, correct? Yes. So essentially what we're trying to do is not get you guys to do a 100% evaluation of every single detail, though that would be amazing if you did. A lot of this stuff is more fictional. You don't have to have a product or a service like fully lined up. You just have to have a concept or an idea that you can possibly see being a business plan. Now, don't go too crazy in the fiction and create a product like teleportation. That won't fly. It has to be reasonable enough that people can envision it and envision that you could possibly do it if you had all the money and resources to kind of get that idea off the ground. So yeah, I would say the information just has to be coherent enough that it makes sense to the judges, that when they see it, they're not going to be shocked. Or like if you're asking for like $5 million, make sure you're kind of like checking up on that. So yeah, there's a lot of reasons to why you don't want to make it like a $5 or $50 million business plan or something like that, because a lot of the startup companies, they will often try to evaluate companies that have just reasonable amounts of plans in place. You don't want to go over crazy with how much you're taking this into fiction. There you go. Any other questions? If we already started our business and have been seeing growth recently, is it important to include that? We started our business and have been seeing growth recently. Is it important to include that? Well, if it's a business that you have active, in fact, I'm not sure how to go about that, because it seems like you have all the details together, but then again, someone with a fictional idea can, of course, still take the cake. So if you have seen growth recently and you've had put this into place, I wouldn't say it's important to include that, because you're going to go up against a lot of different places that are just, they haven't existed. They're just an idea, concept floating around in space. So if you do, you'd be kind of like an oddball out with that sort of detail. So I don't think it's, necessary that you need to show it off, but I would say if you do have reasons to suspect that it will work out, then of course I would include that detail. So if you do have a business in effect and it is seeing growth, what I would say is, rather than keeping the details like, oh, this is working and here's the numbers, how many customers get on a daily basis, I would just kind of like take the details about how you got that many customers and put it into place. It's not about showing off your numbers. In fact, a lot of the times numbers that people will display will be fake. So sometimes people will think that your values might be fake. I don't know. Depends on the judges. So what you're trying to hone in on is less on the number of growth you're seeing. It's the reason why you're growing. Any other questions at all? I am here for, okay. If we do not have a prototype of our product or service, that would be a good way to help the judges to visualize the concept of product. For example, a virtual reality application. What would be a good way to show pictures? So if you don't have a product or if you don't have a prototype or something that you can visually display for people to see, then what I recommend you doing is kind of explaining it in a way that would be visual. You can use graphics, you know, kind of like, think about it as charades, something like that, on your presentation. What is, so your concept is virtual reality. How do you display virtual reality without showing the product? So like for your particular thing, your product or service, is it a headset that you're wearing? Is it something that like is glasses that you just put over your eyes? Is it something you go to sleep with? So that's the type of thing, is like, give me enough detail to understand what exactly you want me to visualize in this sort of sense. You don't have to show it to me, but you need to answer my questions about like, oh, if this product is going to be something that could physically injure me, or is it something that I just kind of have to mentally like wear, or it's something that I connect to in my brain? Then like what does it look like, or less of like, well, what is it exactly going to hook up to, what's it going to look like on my face and stuff like that. You don't have to show me a picture of it. However, if you can Photoshop something together or kind of explain it in a way like, what is virtual reality? Because then again, you're talking to a lot of professors and older people and people in VCs that have been in the business for a very long time. So they're going to be old people. So make sure you explain to them, what is virtual reality? What is exactly is it that gets you there? When a judge asks a question, they randomly select any member of the group to answer the question? Ah, this is a great one. So for the judges, we give them free reign to do that, actually. So they have the ability to randomly select any particular person in your group to answer a question. And usually what I've seen is they will usually pick people that don't speak a lot. The ones that do not speak a lot often get targeted by a barrage of many questions to make sure that your entire group understands the entire presentation. So what I will say is that they can ask questions to randomly selected members in your group, though I will say it's not as random as you may think it is. Otherwise, they may just ask open-ended questions, and oftentimes you'll need one person to answer it. Make sure that you kind of, you know, voice out that you're going to answer the question or you're going to add on to the question. And also, this isn't a part of the question, but what I'll say is very simple, clean, and detailed. That's how you want to answer your questions. Do not give a full in-depth presentation. You do not want to waste times. Those questions are there to save you points. The more questions they ask, the more points you're going to get saved. So make sure it's crisp, clear, and detailed, or well, crisp, clear, and right to the point for answering those questions if you want all those points. Any other questions about how you can get more points or how you can set this all up? If there are no more questions from you guys about the competition or specifically about pitch decks, then I'll be closing off this session. So thank you guys for attending the session. Hopefully this was useful for you guys, and those who attended got some extra resources. Then again, if you're watching the video and you're not watching it live, there are links up here that you can click on to make sure you get the details. And if you ever need an idea, just go into a Google search and then just type in that you want to find an example pitch deck. That's what you're looking for, pitch decks. Type that in and you will find a myriad of different results. Though do not copy them entirely. I can tell a presentation when it's copied. Oh, when do we know whether we have been accepted or rejected from the first round screening round? So you'll know by tomorrow. For the semester's courses that are going through, you will know if you get rejected or if you pass through tomorrow by evening time. For those that are in the quarter schools, you have until October 10th at 11:59 midnight to get those answers in that you're down to do this. And do make sure, oh yeah, for the open sessions as well, those open sessions will be remaining open until October 10th as well. So if you guys did not have the chance to sign up for your guys' particular college, then you can sign up for the opening round. And though it might be a little bit harder since the bar might be raised a little bit, I'd say take a chance. You're here to learn something and try to get some competition. Also, you do receive a certificate of participation, which is always good for those college applications. And if that is all, then I'm going to end it here. Thank you guys for joining us, and I hope to see you guys during the competition. Make sure you're present, and always feel free to hit me back up. I'll drop my email into the chat for you guys. And you can always ask me any questions you'd like through email, and I can answer them and help you out with whatever you need. With that being said, take care, you guys. Hope you guys stay well, and I will see you guys during the competition. Take care now.